It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs having fun.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Monday's episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Paul Dottino and Matt Citak, and we're here for the next hour to talk Giants football with you, or for that matter, NFL playoffs, NFL news, whatever it is you'd like to talk about. We'll try to keep it to the NFC East at the very least if we can, at 201-939-4513. Hashtag Giants Chat on Twitter, although we don't seem to get those very much anymore. We're also on the YouTube app, the New York Giants page, if you want to go there and watch the program, and you can also send us some questions and comments there as well. We come to you from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. And as always, if you're not joining us live, you can get an archive of this program, as well as our entire podcast network, on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at giants.com/podcasts. So, folks, I thought for today, just for a moment, we would at least reflect on what happened during Wild Card Weekend, because we saw an absolutely dramatic, and I mean dramatic, slate of games unfold. Games that came down to the last minute. I mean, I don't know, maybe you folks going in thought that the Chargers-Patriots game would be the dud of the weekend. I certainly didn't, but it turned out to be. And there's still a Texans-Steelers game tonight. But the fact that these games, outside of last night's prime-timer, went down to the final 3 minutes, wow. And in each case, the team that was behind came back and stole the victory.
Yeah, I think I saw that it was after the Eagles 49ers game. Oh no, maybe it was even after the Bills Jaguars game that there were the most amount of fourth quarter lead changes just through the first 3 games of Wild Card Weekend. So only halfway through, there were more fourth quarter lead changes already than any other Wild Card Weekend ever before.
I'm not surprised.
It's crazy. I mean, I guess with how unpredictable the season has kind of been and felt, so far the first round of the playoffs has followed that route with some craziness. I mean, all season we saw teams put together these crazy comeback efforts. Other teams collapse, and it's exactly what we saw this weekend. We got a little bit of everything.
Oh, and by the way,
some exciting football.
We saw a lot of that this season firsthand.
Yes,
collapses.
Unfortunately, we were on the not so great side
Indeed.
of the craziness this season.
But really, if you go to every NFL city, every team will tell you, well, except for the ones who were on the top shelf, there were collapses all over the league this year. I mean, the stability of the NFL went right through the floor. Every team virtually had at least one collapse, and then some had many collapses. That's the nature of today's game.
Yeah.
It just is.
That's true. I think the biggest collapse, at least from this weekend, clearly was that Saturday night game between the Bears and Packers. That was it was rough. One of my good friends is a Chicago Bears fan, and I was texting with him throughout the game, and the roller coaster ride of emotions that those fans went on from both sides throughout the game. Obviously, my friend was a little happy at the outcome, not so much Packer fans, but I think it is somewhat noteworthy for the Giants about that game, because immediately going into the weekend, Matt LaFleur was one of the head coaches that there were rumblings about, similar to, in Baltimore before that Week 18 game, that does just some rumblings
that something could happen.
That something could happen if the game does not go well.
Yeah.
And obviously in the first half, everyone was like, oh, forget that. They're up 21-3 at halftime. Obviously, with how the game ended, that just ramped up that, buzz even more. But there was a report this morning. Now, nothing is concrete. Nothing is official. The Packers have not officially said anything. But the reports from, your Adam Schefters, Ian Rappaports, Tom Pelisseros have come out and said that the Packers are working on keeping Matt LaFleur as the head coach. So he's going next year would be the last year of his contract. It sounds like they are going to work on an extension to keep him in Green Bay as opposed to firing him, in which case if that team's head coach vacancy was open, they probably would be right up there with the Ravens as the top choices just because you have playoff caliber rosters, teams that are ready to contend and compete immediately starting in 2026, while the other openings around the league are, teams drafting at the very top of the draft, which is, slightly more a longer turnaround, you would think, from being a team like that to a playoff team. So again, it's a little noteworthy because a lot of people were connecting dots that if that Packers job became available, which it still might, but that John Harbaugh, that's where he would want to go because he's a Midwestern guy. His, the connection I saw was that his agent's dad worked for the Packers for like 2+ decades and has a great relationship with them. That much I don't see the ties. Jim and John Harbaugh both being Midwestern guys, that I can kind of see a little bit more. But at least from the reports this morning, it doesn't sound like they're going to make a head coaching change, which for those of you Giants fans that very much want John Harbaugh to be the next head coach of the Giants, I will say that is a little bit of good news. You never know. It's still not concrete. It's not definitive, but it would have been a lot riskier or trickier if the Packers had moved on this morning, making that job available.
See, this time of year, are you familiar with the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yes.
Okay. For those of you who are not, it's a fictitious storyline that people like to associate with a given situation because somebody knows somebody who 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 knows somebody 7 times back. And that's the problem with all of these coaches' rumors. Because everybody has a 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon with every single job and every single name that's out there.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. The only thing I'll say in regards to, what I had said about Harbaugh and like his agent's dad or whatever was there were guys like your Adam Schefters, your Ian Rappaports that were highlighting that connection, which those guys don't put out any sort of information like that unless there's something behind it.
But everybody's looking for something to say.
No, for sure. That's why, if, before even the game, there were so many reports about, if the Packers do get rid of LaFleur, he's going to end up here because of this connection or here because of that connection. Like, him in particular has connections to 3 of the different teams that have head coaching vacancies or people that work for that organization now. If he were to be let go from Green Bay, obviously couldn't go to all 3 of them. So I do get what you're saying. This time of year, you're either in the playoffs and focusing on the playoffs, or it's speculation city.
That's
and
it.
That's unfortunately where the Giants find themselves.
Put every rumor on the roulette wheel and just spin it around and around and around and around, and that's what it all comes down to. What do we know? Okay, well, here's about the only thing we know for sure, according to the national reports, and there appears to be a little bit more teeth and substance, that the Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins coach, who was jettisoned just before the weekend, has apparently received a bunch of calls and interest from a number of teams.
I've seen 4 teams reach out wanting to interview him. The Browns announced this morning that they are interviewing him today. And then I forgot which one. I want to say Atlanta.
I didn't see all the teams, but I know that there were.
Atlanta, Tennessee, and I cannot remember the 4th one.
Let me see if it's.
And I also saw that the Lions put in a request to interview him for offensive coordinator.
Okay.
Which, as we discussed Friday, all of these guys, Mike McDaniel, those sort of guys, obviously are going to try to get a head coaching job first before they start focusing on the offensive coordinator roles. And the fact that he has reportedly 4 interview requests for head coaching jobs, I think there's a decent chance that he might land one of them. And he's a great offensive coach. So,
now of other interest in terms of coaching, did you see where after yesterday's Eagles defeat, there are actually some people on network television wondering who in Philadelphia might wind up getting the door? Now, I don't know, are they referring to the coordinators? Are they referring to Sirianni as the head coach? I don't know, because they weren't real specific, but they were saying many of the network pundits were reacting to their defeat, saying somebody's going to be let go.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's been, sort of a drum beating for a lot of the season about making some sort of coordinator change in terms of the offensive coordinator.
Before last season, there was a lot of rumblings that Sirianni was not getting along with the players and so forth, and something might happen. And then how'd that go? They won a Super Bowl. So I don't know.
I've seen some Eagle fans saying, "Oh, Sirianni needs to go." It's like the guy literally just won helped win a Super Bowl a year ago, less than a calendar year ago from right now. He won a Super Bowl, and that was after making the Super Bowl the year before. And you want to run him out of town? I am personally not the biggest fan of his. But if you win a Super Bowl, you get a little bit of a grace period.
You think?
Just a little bit. And again, clearly something is off with that offense. The defense is fantastic.
Yes.
Vic Fangio, an amazing defensive coordinator. Something is up with the offense, whether you want to blame it on the offensive coordinator, Jalen Hurts, who has not necessarily played the greatest last few weeks of football, A.J. Brown, who, despite being tremendously talented, there's clearly some stuff going on behind the scenes there.
His focus is not right.
I mean, him and Sirianni got into a screaming fight on the sideline yesterday.
Yeah, something's messed up. And it's impacted his play on the field, because we saw him not make plays that he makes.
Yeah. So I don't even know where to point the blame to in the Philadelphia in terms of their offense, but I do expect there to be some level of changes. I would be shocked if it's Sirianni. If they decide to do a coordinator change, I don't think that would be the most surprising thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if A.J. Brown played his last game as an Eagle. I mean, I certainly hope so, because I would love to not have to face him twice a year again moving forward. But that's going to be an interesting offseason for Philadelphia, because, every year we hear about how Howie Roseman is an amazing general manager, great personnel. But we've talked about it for the last couple of years, how he keeps on adding void years and pushing cap hits further and further down the road, kicking the can down the road. That's all well and good when you're contending for a Super Bowl, which this roster for Philadelphia still is. But eventually, you have to pay the price eventually. We saw it with the Saints within the last year or two.
Right.
They kicked the can down the road for a decade, and it finally caught up to them. Mm-hmm. The Eagles' Super Bowl window with their current core of guys, they do have some very talented young core pieces, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But a lot of their big-name guys, I would say at the very least, are in the second half of their careers. Mm-hmm. And so that window, it's still open, but each year goes by, it's starting to close slowly.
Well, the cracks in the offensive line definitely hurt the run game.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, what I noticed about Saquon Barkley, and I don't want to harp on this too much, but we all told you that when he signed a deal with the Eagles, that was a mortgage deal. They were going to be all in on him, give him a huge fat contract, like you said, put the credit card out and extend him for a whole bunch of years with void years and everything else, because they were going to be all in to try to get it now. And they got it. And he had a career year, one of the all-time greatest years of any running back who ever played the game. This year, until the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, he was not the same. And then all of a sudden, you could see that, this is a guy who I think had to pace himself some, but also because the line was starting to crack. And so what I saw was more flashes of the great Saquon over the final month and a half or so of the season. And you could see yesterday, he was foaming at the mouth. He was trying to drag them into the next round, but he couldn't do it himself because the passing game wasn't there. There were too many times where he was either an 8-yard gain or a 1-inch yard gain, right? Because the line wasn't doing enough for him. And, I'm telling you, the gas tank and the brakes, they wear thin on these kinds of backs. And I said it all along. Barkley's not going to make the end of that contract. There's no question in my mind he will not. And the question becomes, as he's already starting to slip on that cliff, how steep and how quickly does he just become a regular guy again? As opposed to, well, even this year, he wasn't an all-star this year. He was good.
Yeah.
He was good, but that's it. He was good. He wasn't great.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people going into the season kind of expected it just because of how much he touched the ball last year. Like, obviously, he was phenomenal in 2024. Phenomenal. One of the best players in the entire NFL. But he touched the ball 378 times. By far the most of his career, the most in the NFL. They played through February, obviously, Super Bowl champions. It was worth it. I don't think anyone in Philadelphia would say it wasn't worth them bringing Saquon in. But a lot of people expected him to take a big step back this year, especially because of that touch number. And that's exactly what happened. He had 71 fewer touches, but about 870 total yards less this year than he had last year. 6 less touchdowns. Like, he was still good. Rushed for 1,140 yards. I mean, we would sign up for a Giants running back running for over 1,100 yards, 4.1 yards per carry. But it just wasn't the Saquon Barkley that we saw last year. And similarly, 2022, when he had his second highest touch total, the year the Giants made that playoff run, that was his second highest touch total, 352. He had 1,650 yards, 10 touchdowns, was great. That next year, he didn't look like the same back. And that you could use that same sort of criteria for any of these top running backs that are touching the ball 350 plus times. It is very tough to have the ball that many times, take that many hits throughout an entire season, and come back, 7 months later and expect to play at the same exact elite level. It's so tough.
And now he's 29 years old with a history of injuries and a couple of real serious injuries, that are still on his resume. We look at what he did this year. He had the 150-yard game against the Giants. It was the only 100-yard game he had until December. He was not the same guy. And then all of a sudden, including the playoff game, he had 3 100-yard games in the last 5 weeks. Because I'm telling you, he was sniffing another postseason run. And he just decided, you know what? I'm going to catch my second wind here and let me just absolutely ball out and see what I can do to help drag this team into the postseason. I'm telling you, you may not get even this season next year out of him. You might, but you're not getting a full season of threatening 100-yard games. It's going to be more like this from now on. It's going on the down.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to predict he has another, 2,000 total yard season like he did last year, but I personally would not bet against Saquon Barkley. I mean, he's just a phenomenal talent.
But it's
he overall, still seems like he still has all of his athleticism. Maybe not exactly from 8 years ago, but pretty darn close.
But it's
I would have
the
to
package.
But I would have to imagine that one of the biggest priorities for the Eagles this offseason
or offensive line
is going to be offensive line and fixing whatever is wrong with the offense.
They need to.
And it could be shoring up the offensive line, which had been a strength of theirs, the biggest strength of theirs for years. And potentially bringing in an offensive play caller that can, build an offense more suited around the talent that they do have and the run game that they have. Because especially with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, Saquon at running back with that offensive line, that should be a top 5 rushing unit every single season while those guys are healthy.
Yeah. But see, that offense, that Eagles offense this year, because of the cracks in the line, and the quarterback play, which went downhill, it was more along the level of the offense that he played with the Giants. And consequently, it was more of a Giants season for him. If you look at it, his numbers were very much like when he was with the Giants for at least 2 or 3 of his Giant seasons. Of course, he had a couple great ones in there too.
Yeah, I mean, his rookie season,
no question,
looked not quite as good as his season last year, but close.
The point that I'm really making here is that the Eagles are in a very tenuous spot because I do think we could very easily see that window start to close quickly for them. That's really the point that I'm trying to make. And Barkley was the driving force more than anything else behind their Super Bowl season. And good for him. And good for them. They got what they paid for. They mortgaged a huge future, and they got what they paid for. I'm just saying that you got to pay the piper down the line. And the way this team is made up right now, they've got some serious cracks, and they've also got a back now going on 29 years old who has had an awful lot of wear and tear on his tires. I'm just saying that the Eagles may not be the threat. I don't think they're going to repeat next year. They're not going to be a three-time-in-a-row division winner.
No, it's going to be.
I'll say that right now.
It's going to be another 20 years before someone wins back-to-back NFC East titles.
All right. Let's go to the phones. James in D.C., you're first on the show. Hello.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Oh, well, how are you?
What's up, James?
I got a couple questions. It's been hard to get in touch with you guys. So this is some red flags that I have with Jim Harbaugh. I just want to run it by you, see what you think. One, I think his age. Two is being able to relate to the younger athletes that's coming, and the older he gets, the players are going to get younger. And three, listening to some of the sports reporters and podcasters in the Baltimore area. I live in D.C., in the Baltimore area, and I'm worried about probably he's just burned out for the mistakes and stuff that he was making. What they were saying, the mistakes and things that he was making, he could possibly, get burned out. And then I'm thinking that if he's a coach for, say, a good 5 years, he's 68, and if he's not already burned out, I'm worried about that part. Second thing I want to ask you, and I take it off the air, is I know we can never get him, but I like Brian Flores because he brings that Tom Coughlin, Bill Parcells type spirit, which I think New York needs for the players and to deal with the media. That's got to be a part that whatever coach comes in can be able to deal with the media like a Bill Parcells and a Coughlin. I don't think any of the coaches we've had been able to do that. I do like an offensive-minded coach, maybe someone like Kubiak, only because if you bring in a defensive coordinator type of coach and he hires a good offensive coordinator and he does good, we may lose him in a year or two. And then you got to bring in another offensive coordinator that now Jackson got to learn another system. But if you go with I'm thinking a Kubiak or a Stefanski, at least the system will stay the same, the language will stay the same for Jackson Dart. And that's what I have. I'll take it off the air. Wish you guys the best. Thank you.
Thank
Sure.
you, James.
Legitimate points. You always have to be concerned with a young quarterback that if you groom him with a OC and then the OC becomes an attractive candidate for another franchise, you could lose him. That's always going to be
That's a sign
possible.
of good things, though.
If
your OC is being pursued and ends up landing a head coaching job, that means he did a good job with the offense and with developing your young quarterback. So I think we would take that trade-off.
Now, during Tom Coughlin's time here, Kevin Gilbride was the offensive coordinator. He did get an interview with the Raiders while he was here to be the Raiders head coach. He did not get the job. Now, of course, Kevin was a little bit on the older side at the time, but that's also a situation that could also occur where you get a guy who's a little bit older and maybe the head coaching carousel is not necessarily hot to go grab him. It doesn't automatically mean if the guy's really good that he's going to get taken. Bill Parcells had Ron Earhart, who was also a little bit on the older side. To my knowledge, he never got interviewed for a head coach, even though obviously he helped the Giants win 2 Super Bowls. And I think we would all agree that Phil Simms and, Jeff Hostetler did a great job. So I get the point. It's certainly valid. It doesn't have to be that way, and it doesn't have to be the other way. As far as the age for the coaches, that's a fact. Jim Harbaugh is no spring chicken. It is true. He's 63 years old. He can't change that, nor can any team that interviews him. Now, according to USA Today, the average age for an NFL head coach prior to the 2025 season was 47. Okay? 47. As of this past week, the oldest coach in the league was Andy Reid at 67 because Pete Carroll had already been fired. And I believe he was 73 when he got fired.
The oldest.
Okay? Following Andy Reid, you got Todd Bowles is 62. which, by the way, I don't know how he got to 62 because he seems a lot younger than that. Jim Harbaugh is 62, and Sean Payton is also 62. So those are the guys who are in their 60s who are currently NFL head coaches. Now, is that necessarily something that has to be termed as a negative, or can it be termed as a positive? I guess it depends on the situation. It depends on the guy. It depends on his team. It depends on how they run things and the staff that he surrounds himself with. Look, Tom Coughlin was in his 60s when he was coaching the Giants, and he did pretty well, didn't he?
He did. He
So,
lasted a long time.
I mean, I get it. You're stating facts, and I will not dispute those facts. Whether or not they have to be taken as a negative, though, I think depends on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of teams out there are looking for, that next Sean McVay type coach. But you don't, frankly, find 30-something-year-old head coaches that immediately step in and are phenomenal head coaches right away. That doesn't happen that often. There are some occasions, for sure, and there are currently a crop of young head coaches that look like they could end up being very good head coaches. But, 63 years old, that would be second oldest in the NFL. It's not like we're talking about Pete Carroll, who is 73 years old. Jim Harbaugh is 62. I've not heard a single person ever say he's, towards the end of his coaching career. John's only a year older. So
right.
I don't see the age thing as, should be a deciding factor in any sort of way. Again, there's only reports, but when he was first let go from Baltimore, I saw a report that said John Harbaugh wants to coach for another decade, which if he were to land here, I think we would all be thrilled if he lasted a decade here, considering what the last decade of Giants head coaches has looked like. In terms of him being able to relate to young players, because I did see that as one of the reported reasons why Baltimore decided to make the change, that he couldn't relate to the youngest players on the roster. I don't really buy that, because everything we have read, seen, heard about John Harbaugh is he just builds a culture, and I think that's exactly what the Giants need. Refuting that report were about 3/4 of the veterans on the Ravens, guys that have been in the league for at least a couple of years and then older, all of whom were reportedly not happy with the move to get rid of John Harbaugh. So I don't really buy that as he's not able to relate to younger players thing. I don't see that. I don't think that would be an issue at all if he were to come here. Maybe you feel differently, but I don't see that as a detriment whatsoever.
I don't know the man personally, and I think
me neither. This is just from what I've read, seen, and heard.
I'd have to know the guy personally in order to give you a concrete opinion. I don't have one without knowing him. I've met him twice, 3 times in my whole life. What does that mean? Nothing. I know this. Tom Coughlin was an awful lot younger than his age. Okay? Even Pete Carroll, who's now 73 and failed with the Raiders. I was just looking at his track record. Okay? Go back over the last 5 years, which means early 70s, late 60s. Okay, this year turbo with the Raiders. I think that whole thing was a mess. But the year before, when he was in Seattle, they went 9-8 his last season there. The year before that, they were 9-8, 7-10. All right, but 12-4, 11-5, and 10-6 going back to 2018. Okay, so mid to late 60s, he's still winning 11 and 12 games, and he's in the playoffs. So, look, all I'm going to say is, please let's not get so simplistic and so naive to think that a coach's chronological age is automatically going to be a detriment to his ability to produce a winner. I don't think that's fair to anybody.
Yeah, I agree. Look, not that he's significantly younger, but Brian Dable is now 50 years old. And it was well known during the 3.5 seasons here that he was, a player's coach. And he did get along great. With every interaction I ever saw with him and a player was positive. And the players in the locker room obviously liked him a lot and respected him. How did that turn out, though? He was fired after 3.5 years with 3 straight seasons of poor football. And that was with, a player's coach that could relate to the younger guys on the team. And it didn't work. So I don't think
reverse, Andy Reid.
Yes,
is 67.
I don't think,
are we gonna say Andy Reid can't succeed because he's too old?
I don't think you can pick a head coach, I'm not going to say only because or even a significant reason because he, can connect and relate to the younger guys. Like maybe if you're a college coach dealing with the whole NIL nonsense, maybe, but not in the NFL. Guys get to the NFL, they need to grow up a little bit and mature a little bit earlier than, your normal 22-year-old.
Well, also to put so much stock in the head coach's age really dilutes the value of his staff. Honestly, it does. Because the staff is so critical to the head coach's success. And if you're just going to say, well, the head coach is old and that's why it's not going to work, well, then what does that say about the value of his staff? They must really stink, right? I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
We go to line 3. Rob in Connecticut. You're next on the program. Hello.
Good morning. Oh, actually, afternoon, gentlemen. How are you doing today?
You too, sir. How
Good.
are you?
How are you, Rob?
I'm doing very well, thanks. So, look, I think nobody's talking about it, but, I mean, take a look at the dead cap situation. We have the best dead cap situation in the league this year, 216K. I mean, that's much better than it's better than we've had in 30 years, by the way. We have no void years. Next year we have 112 million. Year after that we have 238 million. We have no Gettleman or previous regime contracts. I mean, we're in a great position. You take a look at some of these other teams. I mean, somebody today said John Harbaugh and the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have the Deshaun Watson albatross. Who would want to go to that franchise?
Probably not a lot of people.
I mean, but don't you agree with me? I mean, seriously, we have a great situation. I mean, from Joe Shane gets a lot of crap, but he front-loaded a lot of his contracts, and there's no void years. And I mean, under the hood, there's a lot to work with, and the roster-wise too. So John Harbaugh or whomever, I think. I mean, my God. Got a lot more. I think a couple more people will be canned. What do you think of the whole LaFleur situation? I think he's going to get terminated personally.
Well, they're saying this morning that they're trying to work it out. But Rob, to your point, okay, in terms of what Joe Shane has done, it was always a 5-year plan in the NFL. Every time you got a new GM or a new coach, they would always say, okay, he's got a 5-year plan. And that's the way it was until social media got involved. And then the pressures from outside every NFL building became so hot and heavy that the fans and the media outside those buildings would not allow for any 5-year plans. And then all of a sudden, now it's got to be a 3-year plan or a 2-year plan, or we're going to burn your building down. And that's what it's become, okay? And so the marketplace today is all about that. But when you consider that Joe Shane is going into his 5th year, okay, he's had 4. He's going into his 5th year. Traditionally, that's the way the NFL used to allow you to build your teams until, again, outside forces and pressure just made the climate change in this league. That doesn't mean it was right, and it doesn't mean it was wrong, but it certainly was different some years ago.
Sure. I mean, he had discipline, though. He stuck with it because what happens, somebody comes in, they get a little aggressive, they make these unrealistic expectations, let's just kick the can down the road. Joe Shane, look, I'm not the biggest Joe Shane advocate, and I'm not advocating for him, but from a point of view of what they have to work with, I mean, he stuck with his guns. And, you take a look at some of these other situations across the league, and the fact that we have, good team, our quarterback. Nobody's having this discussion if we don't have Jackson Dart on the roster, right? But we do, and we have the salary situation. I mean, the cap might not be the best, but it's about the dud cap. The gold mine here.
As the cap space has been quantified right now, for me, as I understand it, the Giants will be right in the middle of the pack.
Yep.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. right? Nothing wrong with being in the middle of the pack.
I'm excited about the dead cap. That's
The
what
dead-
I'm excited
now,
about.
And that is a very interesting point because Joe has almost got like an allergy to dead cap. He does not like dead cap.
I was about to say, he made it very clear basically from day one that he was not a fan of, kicking the can down the road, pushing cap hits down the road, restructuring. I mean, we see the last couple of years, we've seen the Giants have, restructured contracts from some of the bigger name veteran players on the team, but they don't do it unless it's a situation where like they need to in order to get through the season. Like Joe has been you say what you want about him, but he's done a good job of just not pushing cap hits, dead cap, as you mentioned, Rob, pushing that to the future where, this year, as you guys mentioned, middle of the pack in cap space. But if you look at next year, as of right now, it's like $130+ million in cap space. Now, obviously, some of that is going to be used up for sure for signings made this offseason.
It's $112 million.
Yeah, but there's still going to be a pretty large number next year.
Yeah, sure.
The Buffalo lessons that he was taught by Bean have certainly taken hold because the Bills don't like to do that either.
Yeah.
And look
the Bills also have good numbers next year. I mean, so that's great. I mean, it really is. And I'll tell you what, because back in 2024, the New York Giants they had $80.5 million of dead cap. So that's awful. You can't move with that. At least you can move around with some. You have flexibility. I mean, you could have a gigantic salary cap if it's all but if it's all going to be confined with all this voodoo. I mean, you're still going to run into problems, and I don't see any voodoo in this situation.
It's a pretty clean situation, Rob. You're right. You're absolutely right. And perhaps we don't do a good enough job of bringing that up often enough.
Well, you do a good enough job for me, gentlemen, and
you're very kind.
Anyway, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but you have a good day. All right.
You too.
Thank you, Rob.
Enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, look. Again, we discussed before the Eagles' situation with how Howie Roseman has pushed cap hits further and further down the road. If you're contending for a Super Bowl, if you are one of the contending teams, you can do that. 100%. You should do that. As we've literally just talked about, windows to win Super Bowls in the NFL are only open for so long. So if you're in that window,
is what it comes down to.
Yeah, if you're in that window, you need to go for it because you don't know, it could change in a year, and that window could slam right in your face. So in those situations, you go for it. The Giants the last couple of years have obviously not been in that situation. I don't think anyone would say that the Giants the last 4 years have been, ready to legitimately compete and contend for a Super Bowl. Obviously, the first year under Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, they made the surprise playoff run, which just based on some of his comments he's made over the last year, I don't know if the front office was even expecting that success the first year.
No.
It sure does not seem like it. Now,
and it did force them to tweak their policy just a little bit. And
yes,
Joe has said in retrospect he learned from it.
Yes, he's basically, owned up to that mistake. When you make the playoffs, it's kind of hard to then the next year be like, you know what, we're going to let two of our biggest contributors to that playoff run go, guys that have been here for years. We're just going to let them walk and continue with our rebuild. Joe has said that it led to them making some decisions that if he could go back in time and change it, he would, but obviously you can't do that. So the cap situation, now, look, again, I'm not trying to defend every move that the front office has made over the last couple of years. There have been some hits, there have been some misses, a lot of misses, but the cap situation is one thing I hope we can all agree on. That has been the front office has done a very good job of keeping the Giants in positive cap situation. Now, that only helps you so much if you are then hitting on your draft picks and the guys that you do sign to free agent deals, you're hitting on those as well, because if those flop, then it doesn't really matter what your cap situation is. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have a good team. So,
or at least they have a chance, though. With some room, you have a chance to do something.
If the Giants take a big step this upcoming season in 2026 with a new head coach, which obviously we're all hoping for, if that happens, then next year they would be in a situation where they have the cap space to then go out and maybe add some serious pieces to then maybe take them to that contender status the following year. But it obviously all starts with taking the first big jump, which Giants need to do that first. This coming year, we need to see a big step up.
We go to Brian in Central New York. You're next on the program. Hello.
Hey guys, how you doing?
What's going on?
Good. How are you, Brian?
I mean, I've got a lot of issues with the way Joe Shane has done stuff, but if we happen to get John Harbaugh, it's just like letting all that go and just riding with it. The fact that he's recruiting so hard to try and get him, reports say, that's good to me. But I want to talk about the draft. I don't want to let go of Illuminor. I want to resign him. Mm-hmm. I think it's criminal that he hasn't been resigned already. I think this is one criticism of Joe Shane that nobody can deny. He does not resign our good players. I mean, I was a big proponent of trading away Barkley. I was all for it. Barkley had to go. He's a luxury. A running back like that is a luxury to have. Okay, you can't. It's the hardest position to win with.
Okay, he did re-sign and extend Andrew Thomas and Brian Burns.
Or Dexter Lawrence.
Burns
he traded for.
Yeah, but then he extended him on his contract.
That's true, Paul. But I mean, he let go. He let go of Jordan Love. He didn't get that much money. I understand
right, but
what your argument will be.
Okay,
I remember your argument from years ago. It's like by the time Jordan Love came back, the money was already spent on somebody and stuff.
They did try. They definitely did try to bring Julian Love back. And obviously, it didn't work out. He went to Seattle, and he's blossomed since then. But there was an effort made. It's a two-way road.
And the original offer...
than both the safeties we have now.
The original offer to Love, had he taken it, was better than the offer he got from Seattle that he eventually wound up going for. So you can't get on Joe for that. That's on the player and the agent. They fumbled that away.
And in terms of McKinney, yes, the Packers just went out and blew every other team out of the water with their offer.
I was never going to bring up McKinney. It's just I miss Love, because he was.
I know.
We do too.
So do they.
He's a phenomenal person off the field too.
Joe wanted him back. He wanted him back. The player and the agent got a little greedy. But I'll say this to you, okay? In all honesty, and I mean this 100% now. In terms of Jermaine Illuminor, they got him at a really, really nice rate because over the course of his career, he had never ascended to the level that he played at this season. This was by far the best season of his career. He played well. He was good.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. He was good.
No, I agree.
All right, so here's the problem, though. When you get – I'll let you finish. I promise I will not cut you off. The problem when you get a player like that is when he outplays his value and his contract, and now he's due for a new deal. He's going to want to recoup as much of that money as he possibly can because he knows he outplayed his contract.
And especially because he's never gotten a contract like that in his entire career. He's played on one-year deals basically his entire career prior to signing the somewhat cheap two-year deal with the Giants. Now he's looking to cash in. I don't blame him.
And you can't blame him.
I don't blame him either. I don't blame him either. But he should be signed already.
Well, but the problem is, but here's the problem. It takes two to tango and get a deal. Jermaine Illuminor is going to test free agency because he wants to, as Matt just said, he would like to cash in on his career year. So he's going to test free agency because he wants to know what is the maximum number he can get. And as much as I like Jermaine Illuminor, and I think he's been an asset to this team, you know how I feel about this offensive line and how much better it was this season. But you know what? If he gets blown away with a really, really big number, you can't blame the Giants for allowing him to go. Because if it's a sweet, sweet number and he gets blown away by another team, you can't break your bank to bring him back.
No, I understand that, Paul, but at what point can we? It's we got to what's the one determining factor where you spend money in free agency? It's when you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal.
Yeah, but part of it is also and I understand that. See, this is always a spider web. You hear me talk about it all the time. You're right. That in a bubble is an absolute correct philosophy. But here's the other part of the philosophy. How much are you going to spend to retain one of your good players if you have a young player, and I'm going to mention Marcus Bowe right now, a young player who you really think can be really, really good, and you're clearing a spot for him, and you're also going to save a whole lot of money by letting him compete for the starting job instead of overpaying for a guy who you know is trying to cash in.
Yeah, look, right now, with everything we just said about Jermaine Illuminor, his career, and this contract situation he's facing this offseason, the only way he would agree to an extension right now is if the Giants blew him out of the water with an offer, because he wants to test free agency. And so the Giants would be basically bidding against themselves right now to lock him into some humongous extension where he might not even get close to that number come March when free agency begins. And just because he tests free agency, that doesn't necessarily mean he's gone. I mean, the same thing happened with Darius Slayton a couple of years ago. He tested free agency and then ended up signing back with the Giants. It just didn't happen until March. It could happen again with Jermaine Illuminor. We don't know.
We'll see. We'll see what the number is, but look,
to me, if you're depending on Bo, you know, I like Bo. I really do like Bo, and I think he will be something. But to me, if you're operating under that like that, you're always an injury away from having a huge hole. And I'd rather have the embarrassment of riches of re-signing Illuminor because we got a QB on a rookie deal, and I'm not even have Bo. Have Illuminor and draft another lineman at 5. Or you know, this is the real reason why I called. If it's me, Paul, I'm going either lineman or I'm getting Caleb Downs because we need one of those two things to me. These are cultured players who will elevate the floor of this organization, and I'm tired of the losing. I do not want to pick in the top 10 next year. I'm tired of
Nobody does. Trust me. Trust me. And to be honest with you, I'm not saying that you're wrong. Please understand that. Because there are a lot of ways to look at this. It's just that every way you look at it, there's always going to be a positive and a negative to it. None of these answers that either he gives you, you give us, or I give you are 100% correct. Because the only thing that's 100% correct is hindsight. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, everything else is a gamble.
I don't know what Joe Shane's seen in James Hudson. I mean, like that guy's been invisible. Zudu's been invisible. We've missed on that the offensive line so much. We just need to keep throwing darts at it because yes, they've played better this year. I'm not going to say they haven't. They've played a lot better. But when in situations where we have to run to win the game, to burn the clock, and everybody knows that, we can't run the ball. You know what I mean?
Well, I think they did a better job of doing that. What, they finished 5th overall in rushing yardage this year? And I know what you mean, situational running. And I always stress that. I always stress situational running. And I've said this at least 5 trillion times on the show. You need to be able to grind it out when everybody knows you're going to do it. I agree with you. But for the most part, the Giants did a much better job of that this year.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking maybe the numbers are a bit skewed because of Dart. You know what I mean?
They definitely are a little skewed.
I'd like to see what those numbers look like.
No doubt.
On just third and fourth down.
Understood.
You know what I mean? If you could look that up for me, and I'll take that off the air. I'm watching you guys right now. You guys are awesome.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate the call. Do call again. And this is the whole issue. Every single strand is attached to other strands of the spider web. You can't just say one thing and go by a tried and true philosophy and say, well, we're just going to do it that way. Because if you do, there are 3 other strands attached to it, and they may contradict it. And that becomes the conundrum.
100%. I mean, look, if Jermaine Illuminor was open to signing a quote-unquote team-friendly extension,
give me the pen.
Yeah, I feel like that probably would be something that, would have already happened. But the guy wants to test free agency and make as much money as he can, which, again, do not blame him in the slightest bit. So I don't see how you could necessarily fault the front office for not already extending him if the guy's wants to become a free agent, is just looking for that humongous contract. If you could sign him right now, but it would be an overpay, and by re-signing him, you are guaranteed that both Wan'Dale Robinson and Cordell Flott both leave, and you will have limited, not a ton of cap space to work with to fill those holes. Are you going to do it? I don't think so. And that doesn't even have anything to do with Marcus Bowe. That's just you have so many resources. You gotta, again, we talk about this every offseason. Building a roster is like constructing a puzzle. It's not like you can just take one piece out, grab another one, and immediately plug it back in. Like it's a lot of work to make everything work with the salary cap. Considering where you're drafting. I mean, Rob, you mentioned that you want an offensive lineman or Caleb Downs at the 5th pick.
Right.
Andrew Thomas is the left tackle, so you're talking about a right tackle or a safety with the 5th pick. That doesn't happen very often in the NFL because of position value in the draft.
Right.
Typically, if you're drafting high up, you take one of the positions that in free agency cost a lot of money because you're saving money by using a draft pick on that position. That's why you see left tackles, wide receivers, quarterbacks, edge rushers. Those are the guys that typically go in the top 5, because if those guys, the very good guys, hit free agency at those positions, those are the ones that are completely breaking the bank on the free agent contract. So I love Caleb Downs. I think he is a tremendously talented player. There's no doubt in my mind he would improve the defense significantly if the Giants were to draft him. But you have Javon Holland and Tyler Newman both under contract next year. You're really going to then spend the 5th pick on a third safety? It's just position value. You got to, again, it's putting the pieces of a puzzle together with free agency, with the draft. It's not, in my personal opinion, it's not so simple as just saying, like, they need to take this player with the number 5 pick.
It never is. John in Cape Cod, you're next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
It's been a while since I've been on, but, this coaching carousel is occupying everybody's attention. I certainly hope they get John Harbaugh. My second pick would be Kevin McCarthy. But, I got to tell you, if you measure GMs on their draft picks, our GM is 500 at best. Get one, lose one. And I'm talking high-round people. I'm talking Jalen Hyatt. I'm talking, number ones that went bad, number twos that went bad. You look at teams that have got really good GMs like John Lynch at San Francisco. He loses an all-pro linebacker. He goes out and gets a guy out of nowhere, an all-pro that stepped in yesterday and made some of the game-saving plays. Other teams seem to do this routinely. Kansas City loses a running back, so they find Kareem Hunt sitting on the sofa at home and bring him back
John,
in, and he turns out,
John, there is one factor that you're not keeping in mind. When a team is actually already in contending status and they lose somebody, it's real easy to go call up a veteran on the street and say, hey, you want to come here? They're going to be much more likely to go to your team because at that time they're joining a team that's already contending. If you're the Giants, as you have been for 3 of the last 4 years, you have been an also-ran. It's not going to be real easy to go find somebody on the street who's going to be very anxious to come into your locker room.
And the 2 examples you gave, the 49ers and the Chiefs, that's Kyle Shanahan and Andy Reid are 2 of the best offensive minds in the entire NFL.
And contending
so
teams.
It doesn't surprise me that you take someone off the street, throw them into those guys' systems, and they have, I'm not going to say the same success as the guy that they're replacing, but close to it. That's not surprising at all. Those are 2 of the best coaches in the NFL, in my opinion. And you did bring up John Lynch. If you bring up John Lynch, and everyone seems to forget this, he got lucky. And not lucky, because they did draft Brock Purdy with the last pick in that draft, and he made the pick.
I know.
But let's not forget that they had that monster trade up, trading multiple first-round picks for Trey Lance. If they didn't take Brock Purdy, John Lynch may not have a job right now.
No.
Brock Purdy, that pick of Brock Purdy saved his tenure in San Francisco. And now he is a good GM, don't get me wrong, but people seem to forget that he made a ginormous gamble that did not pay off, and he got saved by Mr. Irrelevant in the draft.
Yeah, I realize that, and you're right. That's a good point. But anybody sitting at home also knows, if he's a former NFL pro, he knows how to evaluate talent. And he knows that the Giants are a sleeping giant. They got a lot of talented people sitting there needing better coaching up and a better way to perform. We're talking about a lot of things, but I think we're addressing the symptom instead of the problem. I've been watching the game since I'm 11 years old, and I'm 80 years old now. So do the math.
Oh, that's
I'm talking
awesome.
about Giant season ticket holder.
Great.
The salary cap is a great idea that went a long way to saving the league. But maybe it's obvious, but I think they should have gone one step further with the cap and designed a cap by position for linemen, defensive linemen, offensive linemen, wide receivers, quarterbacks, because right now the quarterbacks are eating such an enormous piece of the cap that it colors all the decisions that the front office has to make about getting new players and finding new talent.
John, I proposed that 10 years ago, okay? And I've talked about it for year after year after year. Either cap the positions or just say that no one player on the roster, forget about positions, just say that no one player can make more than 15% of your cap. And you can pick that player. You want it to be a pass rusher? You want it to be a quarterback? Your choice. But you know the problem with that, right? The problem with that is the players' union will never agree to that in the CBA. They will never, ever, ever agree to that. And then you also got to worry about antitrust, which is how the antitrust violations in the court system blew up Plan B, which you're 80 years old, so you remember the way the NFL was in the golden age of the 70s and the 80s when the NFL was the greatest. And, of course, now it's all watered down because of free agency and the salary cap, which started in 1993, okay? And here's the problem. Plan B was perfect. It allowed teams to build, grow. It allowed them to mesh. It allowed them to nurture and keep guys together and have the foundation of a team. It rewarded good coaching and good scouting, okay? And then once Plan B got knocked down by the court system as an antitrust violation, that's when all hell broke loose. And that's why we have what we have today. And that's why more players get cut because of their contracts than their performance on the field, which really stinks, but it is what it is.
You're absolutely right, Paul. It's typical government, too. Those people can screw up a one-car funeral. I'm a Vietnam vet, and I haven't trusted them.
Thank you for your service. God bless you for that.
Yeah, ancient history, but you know what I'm talking about. I mean, look at the powerhouse the Giants had in the 80s with the linebackers and Phil Simms, who incidentally, it's a travesty that he's not in the Hall of Fame, just like Otis Anderson. They seriously need to look over the whole process, because for guys like that to sit around who've got big numbers, and in these days, whoever does the biggest sack dance and, look at me, they get voted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, there's guys in there that don't have near the credentials of either one of those two guys I was just mentioning.
John, that's another story for another time. Can we worry about getting Eli in first? How about that? Hey, I'm so glad you called. We're kind of out of time. I want to get to a couple of YouTube comments. Right. John, call us again, please.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. You were going to say something real quick.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say that is the quarterback position is the most important position in all of sports. So it does not surprise me that they take up such a significant chunk of the salary cap. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at the teams that are still in the playoffs in the NFL. How many of them have guys that would be considered good to amazing quarterbacks? Almost all of them?
Well, it becomes a law of supply and demand, which is what they want, right? Free market. That's what they want, and that's what they got.
I want to in MLS, I believe there's a salary cap, but then beyond the salary cap, I think you can have like one or two players that doesn't count towards the salary cap, be like the superstar that you get from the Premier League in England.
The NBA has bird rights, where you can re-sign one of your own guys and go over the cap for him. I'm all for that too. If you got a 53-man roster in the NFL, you want to say Each team gets 3 bird rights. We won't call it bird rights. Obviously, bird is NBA because that's what had happened. The Celtics created that whole thing with the NBA because of Larry Bird. But call it something else. Let's have bird rights in the NFL. So
the only thing with that is then you get into a situation where like the teams that have, the wealthiest ownership groups that, could afford to pay whatever luxury tax, they're going to blow over the salary cap number with those bird rights more so than, smaller market teams or teams that with ownership groups that
that's
don't
why
have
maybe
quite as
you only
much.
give each team 2. You could kind of.
I don't know what the right answer is.
I don't know what the
to be
right
honest.
answer is either. I just know what we have now is a shame because too many good football players have to get ripped out of rosters and too many coaches and scouts lose guys that they've developed strictly because the cap says we got to let them go.
Yeah.
It's horrible. All right, real quick, YouTube comments. 11 Amani says, Paul, where'd you get the polo? I'm looking for some new gear. This is nothing more than regular NFL merchandise polo.
That's from years ago.
This is an old one, though. This is an old one. It is a Nike, which is why I can still wear it.
I want to say on
because it's a
the
Nike.
Giants team shop, you can find some sort of Giants polo. I don't know if you'll find this one because, again, this is old. But
This is a few years.
there should be whatever the newer version is.
Yeah, all the coaches' gear, all the polos, they're all available through the Giants team shop. I don't know exactly. It's you go to Giants.com and there's a link to it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's your answer for that. Also, DBL Take 2024. What if the Giants traded down, got Kenyon Sadiq and Eli Stowers, and then a few offensive linemen for the draft? We need easy big targets to throw to, assuming we keep Wan'Dale. I don't think Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be able to stay because I suspect he's going to get a big fat number to go somewhere else.
I do like one of the names that this guy suggested.
I'm not saying
And I did not plant this YouTube commenter, by the way.
I understand.
You know what I'm
I know
referring
where
to?
you're coming from.
Because Eli Stowers is my boy from Vanderbilt.
Yeah, but
And I think he would be a fantastic fit here because he is a big pass-catching tight end. Not so much a traditional tight end. He's not the best blocker, but you want a big target, big athletic target that can line up as like a big slot. That is Eli Stowers. I would love to see him here. So I'm a proponent for this.
they kind of have one who's had some trouble dropping the ball. But
yeah, Eli Stowers didn't have that too much of that problem playing with Diego Pavia these last 2 years.
Anyway,
all
all right. I wouldn't mind trading down from 5. Honestly, I wouldn't mind at all if I could get some extra picks. I haven't decided who I would pick at 5, but I appreciate the thought. I just don't know that Wan'Dale Robinson is going to get a number that whets his appetite from the Giants because they're in the middle of the salary cap pack. I think there's going to be a contender out there, a San Francisco type player, a San Francisco type team, a Rams type team, a Chiefs type team who I expect to bounce back. And they're going to say, that guy would fit our offense perfectly, and we're going to throw a boatload of money at him.
Yeah.
I just think you better be ready for it.
I will say, I feel like Wan'Dale had more respect around the NFL prior to this last season than he may have had even within the Giants bubble because, don't you remember like 2 off seasons ago, CeeDee Lamb on Micah Parsons' podcast was talking about his top wide receivers in the entire NFL, and he mentioned Wan'Dale in there. He's like, keep an eye out on this kid. Like, he's got something. So I do think he is more respected outside of, obviously this past season was his best season, but I think he had a lot of respect around the league even before this past season. So I'm with you. I think there's a chance, given some of the wide receiver contracts that have been handed out by other teams across the league the last 2 off seasons.
And it's not a great receiver free agent class.
Yeah,
he could very easily.
Christian Kirk got a humongous contract, and I think Wan'Dale is better than Christian Kirk. And I think his contract could end up beating that number from a year or 2 ago. So,
and if Pickens gets franchised by Dallas, Wan'Dale
will be one of the top receivers available.
There's no doubt.
But now some teams will cross him off the list because while he did expand his route tree and show that he can run outside routes, he's not your stereotypical like big outside receiver. He's obviously 5'8", 9", whatever. So some teams are going to be like, that doesn't fit us.
We're going over, so I just want to say DBL Take 2024 says also, why don't we sign Spencer Rattler to compete with Jameis Winston? We need a third string anyway. No, the Giants are very happy with Jameis Winston and what he does for this organization and this locker room. That's why they gave him a 2-year deal. It is a very inexpensive deal as far as backup veteran quarterbacks go. And so I don't think you're going to see somebody competing with Jameis. I think he's here as the backup.
Not to mention Spencer Rattler is under contract with the Saints for another 2 years.
Well, there you go. Another reason that's not possible.
They will bring in someone to be the third string
Yes, they
quarterback.
will.
Who that is? I feel
Wanna
pretty
start warming
confident.
up?
Yeah, I don't know if my arms got that.
Folks, that'll do it for today's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. Don't forget, you could always catch our program live Monday through Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's for 1 hour at 201-939-4513. It's presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. And as always, we have come to you from the Giants Podcast Studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. From Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you next time.